Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Anthony Njoku. As always, I got Jack McCurdy rolling with me, but today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're kind of introducing a new concept. We're calling it First and 1085. The goal is to, whenever we get certain news items and whatnot, we're going to come in here and hopefully talk for around 10 minutes and 85 seconds, kind of to, be on the back end of the 1085 Gridiron podcast or whatnot. So, whenever we get news items such as what we have to discuss today, we're going to come in here just for a short period of time and discuss and talk about it, break it down, and give our thoughts on it without going into like a full-fledged episode of the podcast. So, Jack, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well, Anthony. How are you?
Oh, we're hanging in there. We're hanging in there. Things are starting to open back up, which is nice, but we'll see when eventually I can get back to work. But the reason why we're here today is we are here to discuss the Browns have announced that they have picked up the fifth-year options on Myles Garrett and David Njoku. And, obviously Myles was a no-brainer. There was a lot of debate whether or not the Browns and Andrew Berry would pick up the fifth-year option on David Njoku. But they have decided to do so. They've said all off season long that Njoku is in the long-term plans of this organization. There's a lot of speculation of if that was going to remain the case or not. I feel like they had to say something like that. But Jack, when you look at the Browns officially announcing that they have picked up those fifth-year options, what are your immediate thoughts on that?
Well, like you said, the Myles Garrett one was a no-brainer. I mean, obviously, he is in the long-term plans for the Cleveland Browns. He's one of the foundational pieces. With Njoku, like you said, they had said earlier in the offseason they were going to do it. Njoku was a key part of this plan going forward. Obviously, Stefanski loves utilizing the tight ends in his offense. But, people were still unsure, and especially after the weekend when they drafted Harrison Bryant in the fourth round, there was still some uncertainty, but it's clear that, they are going to utilize all three tight ends. They have Austin Hooper, David Njoku, and Harrison Bryant in this offense. And the fact that Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com is reporting that they're going to try to sign both Myles Garrett and David Njoku to extensions this offseason just shows that they still believe in Njoku. Obviously, Andrew Berry was a part of the front office that drafted him back in 2017, and that they see him as one of the building blocks on the offensive side of the football.
It's interesting that they consider that because they did sign Austin Hooper to a nice-sized contract this offseason in free agency. So when you're looking at the tight end room, they have Austin Hooper, David Njoku, Farrell Brown, Harrison Bryant, which they drafted, and there's a couple others in there as well. But that's going to be a lot of money tied up between at least Austin Hooper and David Njoku if they decide to keep them both and extend David Njoku. You're probably looking anywhere in the 17, 18, $20 million range to have both those guys on the roster. If you do decide to carry that, is that going to come at a sacrifice with any of the other guys, whether that be Odell, Landry, who both have large contracts? At some point, they're going to have to extend Baker here in the near future. Chubb is going to need a new contract soon, as well as Kareem Hunt if you're going to keep him as well. So how do you see this all fitting in together with the current salary cap structure and who the Browns have locked up right now?
Well, just looking at some numbers, I'm over at Over the Cap, looking at the tight end contracts, and, Austin Hooper is the second highest paid tight end in football as of now. Obviously, there's guys behind him that are going to get paid, Zach Ertz, George Kittle, so Hooper will bump down. Trying to come up with an ideal spot for where Njoku would want to get paid. Obviously, he'll make $6 million next year on the fifth-year option. Just looking at some of the top tight ends, I could see maybe he'd ask for maybe 7, maybe 8 million. That's where like a Jimmy Graham or a Jared Cook. Njoku has been productive, but he's not one of the top tight ends in football. I mean, he can be still. He's only 23 years old. So if the Browns can get him on a team-friendly extension, give him a couple years so maybe he could still cash in at age 27 or so if he has some productive seasons. I mean, but like when you're talking about the whole team, could it sacrifice, keeping Njoku, and we'd have to let a guy like, say, let's just say Nick Chubb, because Nick Chubb seems to be the odd man out, because when you look at teams contending, they don't invest a lot in running backs, and the teams that do invest a lot in running backs don't seem to contend very long. You look at the Rams with Todd Gurley. It's not hitting them yet, but the Cowboys with Zeke Elliott's going to come to a point where they're going to have to make sacrifices to keep him because he's so highly paid. Nick Chubb might be the sacrificial lamb, unfortunately, as talented as Nick Chubb is. If you're looking to keep guys like Landry and Beckham here, if you're going to keep both Hooper and Njoku in the long-term plans, and then you have to potentially look at paying guys like Denzel Ward and Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, unfortunately, would be the odd man out.
Yeah, and that's not going to be a fun conversation when we really get to the nitty-gritty of that. Nobody wants to see Nick Chubb go, but with the history of how some of these running back contracts have played out, this front office is going to have a very difficult time in ponying up that kind of money for a running back, I feel. So that decision is going to be coming very soon. I'm sure they're going to start to talk about it next offseason as Nick Chubb enters the final year of his rookie deal. Let's look on the other side with Myles Garrett here. Obviously, he's in the long-term plans for the Cleveland Browns. What kind of theoretical contract would you put out there for him?
Well, we know our guy Jack Duffin did something for the Dogland earlier this offseason, talking about a potential Myles Garrett extension. If you look at the top edge rushers right now, Khalil Mack is the top guy. He signed the mega contract a couple off seasons ago now, where he's averaging $23.5 million per year. Myles Garrett's going to set the market. You may see, Joey Bosa try to get up there this offseason, try to get close to that number. I would expect Myles Garrett, whether it's this offseason or next, is going to sign the biggest contract for a defensive player in NFL history. I could easily see him anywhere between 25 to 30 million. Now, I think all this depends on, if we get back to football, in the new TV contracts, if it's going to spike the salary cap like it's been talked about. Now, if there isn't football or stuff gets delayed, that could hurt, the team, the revenue of the NFL, and that could push the salary cap down. But, just looking at some numbers right now, and, based off of what Jack had wrote for us, I'll have to go back and look at the contract again, but I would be shocked if it's anything less than $25 million per year once Myles finally finalizes that contract with the Browns.
What do you think Myles has to prove this season, if there's anything to prove? I know, that the situation last year played out, unfortunately, with the suspension and whatnot. What does he have to come back and do this year to prove to the Browns to give him that kind of extension?
I think he just needs to try to maintain a level head. I think Myles knows that, and it wasn't just the incident on that Thursday night in Pittsburgh. It was, punching Delaney Walker in the opener. There was the couple hits with against the Jets quarterbacks. Like, Myles, we know how talented he is. He just has to keep a level head and knows that, you can still be a dominant pass rusher, but not be a lunatic. And it's not even saying Myles Garrett is a lunatic. It's just that, he's got to maintain his composure and knows that he doesn't need to be violent, even though the football can be a violent sport. Like, Myles can keep his cool, get after the quarterback, make some sacks, make some plays, and he's going to earn that respect and that trust among not only his teammates but his peers across the sideline.
And let's circle back to David Njoku here. What does Njoku have to, kind of the same question, what does Njoku have to prove to the Browns, Kevin Stefanski, in this offense this season in order to get a potential extension?
The one thing with Njoku has always been consistently, catching the football. He definitely needs to improve as a blocker. I think that was something that, Dorsey had called him out on last offseason. But we all know, like, Njoku has the talent. He has, the measurables to be a great tight end. He just needs to put it all together. And I feel like he's got coaches here now, mainly Kevin Stefanski, that can utilize his talents and, mold Njoku into the tight end we all expected he could be when we drafted him. I think it was 25th overall back in 2017. But the catching has been the one thing. He makes contested catches, when he's being, draped by a defender. But then when he's wide open, he seems to be a little inconsistent. So, that's mind-boggling to me because I feel like I would be the direct opposite if I was a receiver. But if he can work on his catching and, improve a little bit in the blocking, there's no doubt that I think Njoku would earn that contract from the Browns.
Yeah, I think that there's, you're right. Njoku has to be consistent this year, especially catching the football. Myles has to be level-headed, so we'll see how that situation plays out. And who knows, maybe one of these extensions will come before the season even starts, which I think would be a really good move on both sides as the Browns try to set up their future here with both of these guys. All right, that'll do it for the first episode of the first and 1085. We'll be back at some point. I'll be on tomorrow night with Hawaii Browns and Mike, and we're going to discuss the draft a little bit. And with all that, we're going to get on out of here. And most importantly, go Browns.